Good evening. I'm Jeff Oxendine. I'm the president of My Health Career Navigator, also an associate dean of public health practice at UC Berkeley Public Health and president of Health Career Connection. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar this evening. Tonight we're going to talk about strengthening your graduate school application. This is prime time for this webinar because many of you that are applying this year, the application deadlines are upon us. Some programs is November 15th, some December the 1st, some in January. So it's commend you for being part of the webinar today. I'm confident we'll give you some insights into how to strengthen your application. I'm joined by my colleagues Olivia Shorter and Sunny Bernard, who are part of the MyHCN team, also Christina Newman. Sunny and Olivia are people who graduated from public health and public policy master's programs, and they'll be joining me for the question and answer part of the webinar. So with that, what we're going to be covering tonight is going to be, first of all, why go to graduate school, which program and degree and school, and you have to be able to address those questions because to be a competitive and applicant and have a strong application, you need to be able to be real clear about those two things, and you need to have your application really fit with those two areas. Those are areas we talked about last week on our webinar about graduate schools in general. I'm going to talk about them, review a little bit about that because we may have some new people, and also talk about them a little bit differently relative to your application. And we're going to talk about what graduate schools are looking for, and very importantly, how can you strengthen your application. So, let's see. To get into this, the first is going to be why go to graduate school. And the key about graduate school is that this is about specializing. And your undergraduate experience, you had a major, which was some degree of specialization, but graduate programs, whether they be in public health or business or social work or city and regional planning or medicine or law, they're really about specializing in the field that you want to go into and giving you the knowledge, the specialized knowledge, skills, credentials, and a relationship or network to help you get to where you want to be. And so what you really want to think about is, what is my authentic health career direction that I'm going into? And then what is that specialized knowledge, skills, credential, network that I need? Because your ability to get into a program with a strong application is going to be, first of all, making the case to them about what your authentic career direction is, and then why you want to be in that program, and why they should select you, and why you're a good fit. And the more you can be clear about the direction you're going in and about what you want to get out of the program and how you're a good fit, the better your chances you are of getting into a school. They do look at your GPA, they do look at your test scores, they do look at your letters of recommendation, all these things that we'll talk about. But for many schools, it is about fit. And many schools and programs and degrees, it's about fit and you making the case. And for you to even get into a program and go, you want to have the fit as well. And that's what those other specialized knowledge, skills, etc. are about. To get into the health field, you need to have a graduate degree, whether it's public health or nursing or physicians. You need to have a graduate degree now, and you need to be competitive, particularly in urban areas like Boston or New York or Los Angeles or Berkeley. There's a lot of people who have master's degrees plus experience that you're going to be competing with for your jobs. The good news is the time spent in graduate school is time well spent because it's a good life, personal and professional growth experience, and it really enhances your earning potential. So these are the whys to go to graduate school. Why it's not a why to go to graduate school because you graduated this past semester and you don't have a job yet, or you don't really know what health career direction that you want to go in, and so you want to go to more school because your friends are going, because your parents want you to go. Those are not good reasons to go to graduate school, and none of those reasons help you make the case to be a competitive applicant to get in. So you need to be clear, whatever your reason is. These are some of the reasons. You need to be clear about your reason, and so you can make the strongest case for why that program, why you, and that you can really make the fit. So that's the first step. The next slide is talking about which program do you want to go to. And I'm not going to go through all of these because we did that on last week's webinar about what each of these different degrees is and how that relates to different health career options and also the combination of dual degrees across these areas. But I list this slide because to go into the health field, you can pursue many educational paths. And it really is looking at the degree, like the degrees listed here, the program, which I'll show you on the next slide, and the school that you want to look at. The combination of those three things in order to make a good judgment about which program that you should go into. And when you're making the case and have a strong application, it matters which degree, the combination of the degree, program, and school that you're going into. So, for example, a Master in Public Health in Health Policy and Management at UC Berkeley has a certain set of requirements that and are looking for certain things that you need to know as far as being a competitive applicant and writing your application in the strongest way possible to get into that program. And that might be different than the Master's in Health Administration program at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, focused on health administration, something like that. Or maybe very similar. You just need to do your homework to find out. Clearly, doctoral degree programs have different requirements that they're looking for and different ways to make the case for what they're looking for. Often somebody in a PhD program, it's definitely much more about research and your research experience and your academic potential and your desire to do peer-reviewed research. And if you have a publication or not, that's much more so than it is for a doctorate in public health, for example, which is more of a professional degree, more of a leadership degree, more of an applied type of a degree. Clearly an MBA program, Master's in Business Administration, they're looking for something different. There are different tests that you have to take. You take the GMAT instead of the GRE, although some MBA programs now have the GRE. They're looking for more years of work experience. They're looking for different kinds of experience. And each MBA program, school, and degree are different. At the Haas School of Business here at UC Berkeley, which is a great school, and there's an MBA, MPH program that I highly recommend here. That MBA program has certain core values that are the foundation for that school and students. And actually, when you apply to that MBA program, there are questions in the application process about your values and or opportunities for you to give examples to how you fit with those values. And they do interviews for students, which not all schools, public health and medicine, public health do, and they're interviewing you to see if you really can demonstrate that you're a fit with those values. So those are the kind of things you need to check out ahead of time. Medical school obviously has its own different set of requirements and the process to get into, which you really need to fully understand. But even that may vary by the school, degree, and program. So the key is figure out what your direction is, why you're going to that school, and then figure out what the requirements are for that particular school and program and degree, and what they're looking for and how to best position yourself. Next slide. I mentioned different programs. We just looked at the degrees. These are the different areas of concentration within public health. Each one of these areas of concentration is looking for something different, has different profiles of the students that they consider to be competitive, different prerequisites that they're looking for, different work experience requirements, and they emphasize different things in the application process. So you need to look at, if you're interested in epidemiology and biostatistics, you need to look at what they're looking for. They're probably more interested in, depends on the school and the program, your GPA and your quantitative test scores than they are your work experience in public health. Although they may value that, they probably are more interested in the other things. And so versus something like health policy management or health and social behavior, they may weigh your work experience much more than some of those other areas. I know some people have asked already about, well, what if I have a lower GPA? How do I offset that? That was sent in ahead of time by some people on the webinar. Well, one of the answers is that you have really good work experience that shows anything strong letters of recommendation from people in the field that show that you can do the work in that particular area of concentration, and pretend maybe it's an alum from that particular program who can even make a stronger case, or a faculty member from that program. And so, the answer about how to deal with a lower GPA depends on the nature of the program. The work experience may not fly in bio and FE. So anyway, you have to think about the area of concentration that you're going into and how to make the case specifically within a school. Each one of those areas is different. Next slide. So, and then also we mentioned medical school, nursing school. There's many other great health professions. So the key is to be clear about why that profession, why now, and what you're looking for to get out of the program, and then what they're looking for, and positioning yourself to do that. Next slide. So speaking of positioning for what they're looking for, these are the kind of things that most graduate programs are looking for. Some schools, degrees, and programs may ask for other things, but a very common thing is looking for paid work experience. That would be particularly for the Master of Public Health programs that are more health policy management, health behavior, nutrition, maternal child health, and particularly for, who are looking for 2 years post-undergraduate paid work experience. MBA programs are usually looking for 3 to 5 to 7 years of work experience. Some social work programs may be looking, in public policy programs, city and regional planning may be looking for more experience, whereas some of them are not. And law schools and medical schools, nursing schools may not require that as much. So you need to think of the school, degree, and program that you're looking for, and figure out what they're looking for in terms of experience, and then figure out what kind of experience they're looking for, and or how you make the case for the experience that you do have about why it's a good fit. Obviously, having a good resume, which is usually sometimes optional for graduate applications, is a really important thing to do. And even though it's optional, I encourage you to do the resume and to have it really be professional and concise, because then the resume can help make the case for you, and can put things that you don't have to then put in your statement of purpose. That it helps you package yourself in the best way possible. Speaking of statement of purpose, and the statement of purpose is often one of the most, if not the most, component of the application. It's where you demonstrate your fit for the program, where you demonstrate your writing ability, and your voice, where you get the chance to tell your story and have your unique voice come through. There are the GPA and your transcripts and all that. That's pretty boring and pretty cut and dried. The statement of purpose is where you tell your story, and we'll give more detail about that shortly, about how to write a good statement of purpose. But if you're going to spend a lot of time on something besides getting your work experience, it's getting that statement of purpose to be really well written, grammatically, very concise, very to the point. Make sure it's telling the story the way that you want it to tell your story, and make sure it makes the case for fit with that degree, school, and program. I can't tell you how many times I've reviewed really amazing statements of purpose, well written by people who have 4.0 grade point average, who have perfect scores on the MCAT or GRE, and they don't mention anything about the school and the degree and the program that they're going into, or they don't mention the program. They'll talk about how they want to solve global health equity issues and be incredibly articulate, and then they won't say why health policy and management at Berkeley School of Public Health. So you want to make sure you're incorporating those things. Most graduate programs also offer a personal statement, which is different than a statement of purpose. A statement of purpose is why, your purpose for being in that program, and at this point in time. A personal statement is more your personal background and the distance you've traveled in your journey to get to where you are, and the challenges that you've overcome, the successes that you've had, the things that motivate and inspire you to go into the field. And the good news about that is that you can write, if there are chances to write two, you can write them with different intentions, and your personal statement can really be more personal, and you can include all the issues, the health issues that occurred with you and your family, and the other things that motivated you, and you don't have to dwell on those as much in the statement of purpose, where it's really, you can mention those things, but you can be more focused about the purpose for that program. Letters of recommendation are also really, really important. Each school and program and degree varies by the number of letters that they're looking for, and also how many they want to have from academic recommenders versus professional or personal recommenders. Some programs are looking for 2 letters from academic and 1 professional, some the other way around. Some don't really specify. Some will allow you to do more than 3 letters of recommendation, which is usually the standard. They'll allow you to submit additional ones, which I would encourage you to do if, and only if, you think it really, there's a person who gives another unique perspective on you as an applicant and a fit for that program. Not just another one that says, oh, this person's really smart, they really do well in school. It needs to be something different. And each one of your letters should talk about a different aspect of you and your candidacy and your fit for the program. So for example, one definitely needs, or more, needs to speak about your academic potential. Graduate schools are looking for people to make the case that you can do graduate work. And one of their number one concerns is are you able to be successful in their graduate program with the rigor of their graduate work? And so you need somebody, hopefully a professor that you know from your undergraduate days or another graduate degree that you have, who can attest to that academic strength. You also should have one that talks about your capabilities as a professional and your experience in the field, and how that will help you to go where you want to go. And then perhaps one that either is a different angle on those, or talks about your leadership ability, or your character, or your commitment to community, or your commitment to global health, or something that really kind of gets across another aspect of you. And you should be strategic and pick people who can speak about these different angles on you, and you can also, they need to be aligned with your statement of purpose and your personal statement. In fact, you should give people copies of those statements in order to help them write a letter that's aligned with what you're going to write. So very important. You need to ask people, can they write you a strong letter of recommendation, not just a letter of recommendation, because you want to give them an out if they can't give you a strong letter of recommendation. You want to have people who know you for some period of time. The first question on a letter of recommendation is, how long have you known the applicant and in what capacity? So you need to be developing relationships now with people who can provide those strong letters of recommendation when the time comes. But very important, there also are forms that they have to fill out now that are different than the actual letter. Sometimes there are other questions like, what do you consider to be this person's real strengths? What are their weaknesses? On the forms, they need to be able to check all the boxes that you're an outstanding or excellent or exceptional candidate. Good or average is not good. So you need to make sure that they will fill out the forms and that they have a chance to know you in these different ways so they can write those forms. Give people plenty of time to write the letter of recommendation. Make a nice package to make it easy for them. Do not ask people at the last minute to do it. They might ask you to write the letter of recommendation or a first draft. I would consider doing that, and I would not hold back on things that are good things to say about you, but I would not over-exaggerate either. Standardized test scores are really important. In some schools, degrees, and programs, not all. You need to know that about the program that you're applying to see how much they value it, and that may or may not be an advantage for you. Usually, you need to get at least, for the public health schools, at least 50th percentile to be admitted to a school of public health, and but you can be admitted with lower scores than that by exception. More competitive is probably in the 60, 70, 80 plus percent, depending on the school and the program. But again, it matters more if you're an Epi Bio and you do really well in that quant part of it. That needs to be really high. In some programs, they might emphasize the verbal part more. Usually they're looking for a balance. And then, the MCAT world, you'll have to ask admissions directors of medical schools, what they're looking for there. And there are plenty of opportunities, things like the Stanford SUMA conference or the UC Davis Pre-Health Conference, which many of those things are online. They just had it last weekend that you could look up, UC Davis Pre-Health Conference. You can get a lot of that kind of information from those kinds of places. You need to give yourself time to take the test more than once. Schools will take the highest combination of your scores. You need to make sure the scores get in on time for the application review. And if you can take a review course, and there are subsidized ways to do that, it may really enhance your chances of doing well in the test. The tests are not an indication of how intelligent you are. They're an indication of how good you are taking that standardized test. So you want to take a course or take the review booklets, take online practices as much as you can so that you can figure out what they're looking for on that test and knock it out of the park if you can. If test scores are not strong, and that is the case for many students, again, don't take it as a measure of your intelligence, but just realize that the other aspects of your application need to be strong in order to offset that. And the graduate schools really, most of them really are looking at the combination of all these different factors in order to be able to identify you as a person and as a professional and how you'll fit with those schools. It's called holistic review that is being done. So if you're weak in some areas, like test scores, it's the overall story that you tell and the package that you put together that's a fit with what that program's looking for that you want to make. There are some graduate programs that don't even look at standardized test scores, or that really minimize them, or that you just have to take it as a way of completing your requirements. So you want to find out what schools that you're applying to and what they're looking for. You should still apply, even if it's lower than you think, but you should really do your best first to make sure you've gotten the best possible score through review classes, through studying, through those other means. I also encourage you to take it when you're closer to being an undergraduate, perhaps when you're just finishing undergraduate or while you're an undergraduate, because you're more likely to be in the school mode and the test-taking mode. The GREs are good for 5 years. The MCATs are good for 3 years, I think. So take it while you're still used to doing the math and writing the grammar correctly, and then have it done, and then go on and focus on the other aspects of your of your applications. GPA is important. Many schools, you have to have at least a 3.0 graduate schools to be admitted to those schools, although there are many people who get in with less than that by exception. More competitive for some schools is going to be 3.2 to 3.5 or above. But again, it's the combination of what you do. Sometimes the more experience that you have, the stronger letters, the less the GPA test scores matter. Depends on the school, degree, and program. If you have a lower GPA because you, like many people going into the public health field, started out as a pre-med major and ran into organic chemistry and some other classes and found out that medicine wasn't the path for you or nursing wasn't the path for you, then that's okay. What you want to do is you want to show that you've improved your grades once you found a different major, or if you had a bad experience in a semester. Once my grandmother died right before finals and I didn't do as well, that's something you can explain in your personal statement or statement of purpose briefly, or there's a supplement you can write in sometimes, and that's a good thing to acknowledge briefly, so that people, when they see it, they can go, oh, that's what happened. But then to go ahead and show what you've done since that time, that you've recovered and are even stronger. They want to see the trend going up, on the GPA. Sometimes if you didn't get a good GPA in a quantitative class in undergraduate, you might want to take a class, and you're going to a quantitative oriented program, take a class at a university extension or something, do well in it, take one class at a time, do a good job. That same thing goes for having lower standardized test scores. A good solid class that in a quantitative area that the school would be looking for can help offset that. And the bottom line of all this is it's all about fit. And by the way, for those of you interested in medical school, there are plenty of people who get into medical schools with less than 3.3 GPAs, with 3.0 GPAs, even less than 3 GPAs. There's good data that shows that, but you have to have a lot of other good things going for you, and you should still apply and let them be the ones. Now, all this stuff, don't self-select yourself out of it. Let somebody else, the admissions committee, be the one who says you're not a good fit. But the bottom line is you have to make the case through all the combination of these things and other things that you can do, which we'll talk about in a minute, about why you're a good fit for that program, particularly at this point in time. Next slide, please. So what other things you can do to strengthen your application are to really develop a good focus on what it is that you want to do and why that program, and begin to pick a program or two or three that you want to go towards and focus on being the best fit applicant for that program. In my case, I have a Master's of Business and a Master in Public Health from UC Berkeley, and I made it my mission when I was finishing up my undergraduate work that I was going to get into that MBA MPH program, and all my choices about internships and work experience and test preparation and networking and all those kind of things came from that focus, and it paid off. It was a lot of work, but it was exhilarating, and it definitely paid off. You want to do your homework on this program that you're going into, including who the program director is and what things they're looking for. You want to attend events like this Saturday at Berkeley. There's a prospective students event on campus that there's going to have faculty, admissions people, current students, alumni. They're all going to be coming and talking about what's it like at Berkeley and how can you prepare and how do you get in and how do you be competitive. And I guarantee you other schools of public health have those things. They have online chat sessions. They have pre-application advising sessions. Medical schools have these things. Dental schools have them. So take advantage. And by going there, you not only get information, but you also get relationships that come from it. You become somebody who has taken the initiative to go there, to find out, and to be a person whose face, they have a name with the face now instead of just one of the many online applications that they get. And you want to build some of those relationships with key people that are decision makers or that are students or that can help you to understand the school, how to position yourself, and when your application comes up, maybe they've met you in some way and will remember that. So visiting is a big part of it too. If you can visit, I know it's expensive and not everybody can do it, but if you can visit certain campuses, it will definitely increase your chances of being able to know that that's a good place, know what they're looking for, know how to describe the fit, because you will have been there, you'll have seen it, you'll feel it. Those are all useful things. And the bottom line is you've got to have a good story that you're going to tell about why this program, how it fits with you where you want to go, how you have this different, unique voice and contribution that you can make going forward. As I mentioned, acknowledging any kind of weaknesses in your application, that's an important thing to do. And then really it is that you want to make sure you're doing as well as you can on each of the individual components, but that you're also putting together a really compelling and concise, overall package that's going to present you in the way that you want to be presented. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the importance of the statement of purpose, really important, and here's some things to keep in mind. This comes from a friend and colleague, Carla Trujillo, who's I think maybe retiring soon from the Berkeley Graduate Division, but has been there for many years, and these are some things that she says to keep in mind. And an important one is that really the admissions committee, and they're reading your statement, they're reading between the lines. They're looking for your motivation, your competence, and as I mentioned, your potential, as a graduate student. And I can tell you specifically in the health field, they're looking for your real passion, your commitment, and not just what you say, but they want you to back it up with things that you have done. And that can come in your resume, but also can come in your statement of purpose. And if you've done some great volunteer experiences, if you've taken a leadership role in a club or an association or your church or community, if you have managed events, if you have been out in the field for a long time, if you've been a community organizer, a policy advocate, a scribe in an emergency department, whatever it is, they want you to be able to show your passion and your voice and your motivation for why you want to do public health or medicine or whatever you're going into. Make sure you write it in an active, not a passive voice. That's something I have to pay attention to. I've got a bad habit of writing in a little more passive voice and from a very positive thing. And I would be, your passion should come through, but I'd be a little bit careful about how much you might be, what's the right word to use? I read a student statement of purpose a couple of days ago that was a little bit too edgy, I think, to be honest with you, about their social justice interests. They were really a social justice focused person, but it went probably for many admissions committee, and I'm at Berkeley in a very liberal kind of a place, and it was still a little bit edgy for me as far as some of the statements the person was making about society and about institutions and some of those kinds of things. And so, you want to be thinking, be authentic, but think about the audience that you're presenting to. Use a lot of examples. Don't just say I'm a really smart person, I'm really passionate about public health. Give examples. And then, as we talked about before, if you've affected your grades, then you can write about that. So those are some wisdoms from Carla. Some additional wisdom from me is on the next slide, which is really, I think a good statement of purpose approach would be to say some combination of these things. I usually tend to start with, what are you doing now, your prior experience, and how your prior experience led you there, and then what is your career ambition, how will this program support it, why you're doing it now, and why this particular program, and also what you can contribute, I think is really important. And, as I mentioned, having a resume or CV in addition to your statement is really good. It really needs to be concise and compelling. 1 page, a page and a half. Make sure you meet the word limits. But even if there's no limit, the people that are reading this are busy. They're doing this on top of their regular jobs. They're tired oftentimes. They have a lot of applications to review. So make it interesting. Make it to the point and compelling. Write down the bullet points that you want to have come across in your statement, and have somebody else read it to give you feedback to see if those are the points that are coming across to them and if it's easy for them to access those points. You can definitely go to pre-application advising sessions or take advantage. Sunny was the graduate applications services coordinator here at the School of Public Health. That group helps look at statement of purpose and gives you tips and those things. So get people who know what programs, degrees, and schools are looking for to give you some advice. Have people who are good at grammar edit it for you, because you really have to make this a tight thing that shows off your writing and shows your voice. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, these are very similar to the next steps from the last webinar about how to pursue and choose the right graduate program. But it really, as I mentioned, start with what's your authentic health career direction. If you don't know what that is, if you have 1 to 3 options that seem to align with the school degree and program, that's great. But if you really are very unsure, it may not be the time to be the most competitive applicant, because you're going to have to make the case about why you're a good fit for the program, and usually that's with some clarity about your career direction. And what you want to get out of the program is very important, because that'll help you actually articulate that to this in your writing, in your interviews, other things that you go through. Really get the experience. I think that'll really help you be the extremely competitive applicant. The more experience that you have and the most relevant experience is going to really help. Do lots of things, going to events and informational interviews to help you know what the programs are looking for, and build relationships that will pay off. And we talked about some of these other kinds of things. And the bottom line is, make sure that your overall application is strong, even if some points might be weak, and then apply when you're competitive for that particular program. So this is just a general overview. with some pretty good specifics, I hope, about how to be a good competitive applicant. And why don't we now turn it over for your questions. And I'm going to again have Sunny Bernard and Olivia Shorter help me answer your questions.
Hello everyone, this is Olivia Shorter, and what I'll do now is go ahead and read some of the questions that were sent in advance, as well as the questions that have been sent in during the webinar. If you have not had a chance yet to send us your questions, please do so using the chat box. Jeff, we had a few questions come in on the letters of recommendation, and could you maybe expand more on who the best people are to ask to write a letter of recommendation, and any strategies or tips for asking people? A specific question is it okay to ask professors from lower division courses or professors outside of the public health field to be a recommender for you?
So I think it depends on the school and degree and program that you're applying for about who the best recommenders will be, and you have to find out what they're really looking for. You have to remember that they're looking for someone who can make the case about why you can do the academic work of that program, and why you're a good fit. I think professors who I think upper division is probably better, because in fact at the School of Public Health here we look at your upper division grades and not your lower division GPA, which is something I should have mentioned. Each school also may calculate GPA a little bit differently. But we do that on purpose because we want to know, we know some people do better once they find their major, but we also want to see how you do in upper division work. So you could have a person who was a lower division professor, particularly if you've known them for a long time and you have a good relationship with them and they've known you throughout your journey, and they maybe have known you in different capacities, and they can speak to how you've grown over time and what you've accomplished over time, and your maturity and your intellectual ability. You can have a lower division person do it. That's fine. But I would also encourage, upper division professors as well. If you can have a professor do it, I think it's better than if you have a graduate student instructor, which I know some of my colleagues do advocate that, and I think that sometimes those GSIs or assistants, they know you better than the faculty member does, and they'll spend more time with you, but they don't carry as much weight with certain admissions committees, and maybe a good answer there is to have them sign a letter, co-sign a letter with the faculty member. You want to really have somebody write the letter who knows you well, and who will be esteemed by that particular school. There are some very esteemed professors that don't know someone well, and they will write a letter. They'll say, yes, Johnny was in my class, and he must be really smart because he got an A, and I have a tough class. And I've seen letters of recommendation. That was the extent of the letter. So that's not a good letter, even though it's a famous person that's writing it. So you want to get somebody who knows you, who can say, I've known so and so for at least, and I think it needs at least to be 9 months or a year, if not longer. So you need to cultivate those relationships, push through any anxiety you have by going office hours and develop those relationships. You also should, if you do internships, if you do volunteer work, if you have a paid job, postgraduate school, undergraduate, you need good letters from those people as well. And if you're going to leave an organization, you might ask the person beforehand, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? If so, let me write down some bullet points that I can use to for when the time comes to write that letter. So those are some suggestions.
This is Olivia. I would just add, when you have relationships with your professors, with supervisors, and you're not, say, planning on applying to graduate school right now, if it's a year, 2 years, 3 years out in the future for you, continue to foster those relationships and stay in touch with them now. It's always, difficult when a few years down the road have passed and now you're trying to reconnect and ask for those letters. So simple emails, cards, every, during the holidays, every 6 months, just kind of giving a quick update of where you are and what you've been doing will take you really, really far in keeping you fresh in your professors' minds. And it'll also help them be able to speak more candidly to, your career goals and your ambitions and how you moved along this path. So don't just think about the letters when you're actually applying to programs, but if you're thinking of doing so in the future, start taking those steps now.
I echo all those sentiments, but one extra thing I'd like to add as well, because I know sometimes people get really busy, and some of the strategies that I've used kind of like in the past is reaching out to professors who have written me letters of recommendation before, but if I know I'm going to apply to several things like in the future, what I ask is, can you give me a copy of your letter? I'll make some edits, then I'll send it back to you in order to review it, and then you can sign off. So it shows that you really respect their time, and at the same time, you're also assessing like how strong people write letters for you and stuff, because that's really important. I think that that's the major thing that we keep saying, making sure that you have someone who can write you a strong letter. And so that's one approach that I've kind of like used in the past. If there's someone I want, but I know that they're busy, I offer to do that, and most people say yes to that.
Another question we received is about the statement of purpose and how personal should the statement of purpose be, understanding that it's supposed to be focusing on the career goals in the program, but do you have any tips for adding a personal touch to the statement?
Well, it should definitely have a personal touch, because it should the place where you want your voice to come, your unique, authentic voice to come through. Sometimes people, I know some people who will read the statement of purpose, and sometimes they won't read the personal statements as thoroughly, or they won't give them as much weight. So you definitely want that to come through. It's good to start with some examples or stories about why you have a passion and an interest or a commitment in going into the health career that you're interested in that particular educational path. And many people do that. But I would just, a caution there is to use that, but not have it dominate the whole statement. Because there are people who say, I've wanted to be a doctor since my 3rd birthday, when my mother gave me a stethoscope, for my birthday, and then proceed to talk about that through the whole statement, or more commonly is they had a family illness and they talk about that through the whole statement, which can be okay, but you have to make sure that you talk about the other key things that we touched on first. And so I think it's good to have some personal motivation, so also some examples. If you say, I'm really committed to serving the underserved, that's a personal passion of mine, then give some examples of how you've done that, some personal examples of when you've done that and how that's influenced you to want to be in that program or that school or that particular career path, or how it's influenced your knowledge and skills. So in no way would I say to not make it personal in your statement of purpose. I'm just saying you have to find the right balance between doing that and also putting in other things about that your goals and that particular program and your skills and your contributions. But I think all that can be really woven together with your story and your voice, which makes it come through.
This is Olivia. I would add that in terms of structure and how you want the flow of your statement to work, I would say being really upfront and direct in terms of where you see yourself going, and if there is this personal story that you think frames that, kind of being upfront and putting that short and concise in the beginning. That way the rest of the essay, and we're talking about all of this experience that you have, is all framed with that perspective first and foremost. I've read some statements where just really jump right into the specifics of the experience you've had and all of the great ways that you are prepared, and it's not until maybe 3/4 of the page down that it says, and therefore this is, because of all this stuff, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and here are the personal reasons why. I would say put that be upfront, be explicit, so that all of the examples you're giving are supporting that, it's supporting the hook that you presented right from the beginning, just in terms of flow and structure.
I'd also say some people use quotes to make it somewhat personal or witty, and I think that can be used effectively. But you have to be sure that it's a quote that really aligns with the rest of what you're writing. It needs to be really well integrated. There are times when people write a quote and then they don't really integrate it well enough in their statement, and then it's just kind of a quote. And then also you need to be thinking about your audiences and see if it's a quote that is going to resonate with people. Sometimes you don't know that, but you just have to be careful, because I had one student many years ago who applied, and she used a quote to start off for her statement of purpose, and I had a faculty member who came to me and said, "Jeff, I know that you know this student, and oh my gosh, I can't get past this quote that she had at the beginning that I didn't like," and so whereas other people liked it, so it's who knows, but anyway, that's something that you can use.
Thanks, Jeff. And another question on the statement of purpose: are there any sorts of activities or involvement that really stand out to readers and admissions committees that should be highlighted in the statement?
It goes back to what I mentioned about the particular degree, school, and program. Each one of those, the things that might stand out to those committees are going to be different depending on the degree, school, and program. That's where you have to do your homework to know what that program is looking for. Back to my example of the MBA program at Berkeley that has these 4 values they espouse. Well, if that's really what they're all about, then that's something you'd want to write about in your statement. Any kind of experiences, activities, roles that you've had that demonstrate that you are somebody who is committed to those similar values would be a helpful thing. If it's a program that's looking for, it's more research-oriented program, then having some research experience would be a really helpful thing to highlight. And if it's something that's really an applied, practical kind of a program, it's all about community or all about corporate management or something like that, then those are things you're going to want to highlight. So it really depends. I will say that work experience, unless it's an academic program, then you want to highlight your academic potential, maybe your research interests, but work experience is a really good thing to highlight, and real-world examples of the things that you are saying and that make you strong, real-world examples that demonstrate that, rather than just you saying, I'm really good at working with community. You want to give an example of when you worked in community and how you were effective and what you learned, or how you failed and what you learned, and how that's going to inform you to go forward. So there should be examples that fit with that particular program. I saw there was a question, Olivia, that Christina sent about when should you apply to graduate school, and it was something about somebody who's an undergraduate student, and I think that it depends on the school, degree, and program that you want to go into. But if it's a public health program, then I would encourage you to get, or a business program, I would encourage you to get paid work experience after undergraduate and not apply when you're an undergraduate. And many schools have an experience requirement on purpose, because they know that they want people who have that experience that they're bringing to the classroom and know what they want to get out of it. And so I would say if it's public health, business, social work, some of those programs apply after you have paid experience. If it's medical school, nursing school, some of the other more clinical professions, then I think it's okay to apply when you're still in undergraduate, as long as you are clear that's the direction you want to go in, and that you think you can be the best competitive applicant that you can be.
And I'd like to add a little bit to that. Like here at the UC Berkeley, within our health policy and management program, we do have a 2-year work requirement, and that's for a specific reason, because we've seen that it's harder to get students right out of undergrad with the HPM degree into like the mid-level manager jobs, which is what we train people for. So I know there's a lot of there's a lot of want to do it right out of like undergrad, and if that's you and you're in that boat and you're thinking about certain programs, ask them, like, if people come in right out of undergrad, where do they go work after they complete the program? So you wouldn't want to invest your money in a program which you do get a master's with, but then it becomes a challenge for you in order to get a job. So that's a question that you should keep in the back of your mind.
Your graduate degree is a big investment of time, of money, of opportunity costs, because you could be working or doing something else. And so you want to make sure it's a good investment. There are programs who will accept you straight out of undergraduate, but they may or may not be a good long-term investment. So as Sonny said, important to figure out what have graduates done from that program, both in the short and the long term, and how competitive are they, and ask different employers about that too, and how they view that particular school and program, and you know, really think about that when you're choosing. But in general, bet more work experience is better for many reasons.
And this is Olivia. I think, again, this really depends on the programs you're applying to. With, as Jeff and Sonny have said, public health programs, Master of Public Health programs, are professional degree programs that are preparing you to enter the workforce, and that's why that work experience is so important. If you're applying to academic degree programs, the approach you take might be a little bit different. So I would just say really research that. As everyone else has also said, really research the programs you're applying to and really understand, are they academic degree programs or are they professional degree programs, and that'll help answer some of those questions. Jeff, a similar question is about the resume that you briefly touched on and the difference between a resume and a CV. I'm wondering if you can expand on that a little bit more, and is it better to submit one versus the other when applying to public health programs?
So good question. I think typically a resume is more for a professional job or degree program, and it's really summarizing your work experience, your skills, your volunteer experience, those kinds of things, whereas a CV is describing some of those things plus the research that you've done, the publications that you've had, the presentations that you've done that are academically impressive. And it's more, so CVs are going to be more for academic oriented programs, and resumes for more professional programs, although each may be different, and so you need to really look at the school, the degree and program that you're going for, and see what that program is looking for. And maybe, yeah, so anyway, that would be my advice. And resumes, unless you've got a lot of work experience, should be one-page resume, to the point. And we have webinars that we've done on resume preparation on My Health Career Navigator that you can take a look at to help with your resume formatting.
Yeah, when we say academic program, we're talking about like things like Masters of Science and PhD programs, whereas an MPH is a professional degree, because I always get that question from students, what's the difference between the academic and a professional program? So bear that in mind. PhD and MS is academic.
There also might be some MA programs too that are that are on their way to. And this is back to Sonny's point about asking, what do people do when they finish their program? Because there are many programs that it might be an MA program or an MS that's just, it's on their way to being a PhD type of a program, which could be really great and is great if you want to go on that path.
We have a few minutes left, so I just want to encourage everyone at this time to send in your questions if you haven't had a chance yet. We have a very public health specific question about how can you direct your statement of purpose to specific programs and campuses, especially if you're applying through SOFAs. So I'll take a quick try at this, and Sonny, I'll also defer to you because it's been a little bit of time since I've used SOFAs, but the School of Public Health Application Service is what a lot of campuses use for the application, and you'll be uploading all of your documents there. I believe, and again, Sunny, please jump in, that you definitely should write different statements for each campus, and you should have a space on SOFAs to upload separate statements per campus. So definitely don't write a statement that's general enough for all of them. That's not the approach that I would recommend. And same thing with your letters. Your recommenders are going to be uploading them directly to SOFAs. But Sunny, maybe if you could talk about the letters being specific. I believe that in that case you're just having one letter per recommended uploaded. So in that case, it probably doesn't want to be per campus. But Sunny, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, it's been a while since I applied too. I think that I'm not sure if my recommenders wrote like a specific letter for each school. I do agree with you, like in regards to the essay, because like I remember a couple of years ago when I was doing it, each school that you're applying to, you had to upload like an essay. So for me, the body was pretty much very similar, but yes, then my last two paragraphs is very school specific. I identify like what at that school would help me achieve my goal. And so like because health administration at the time was something I was really interested, I made sure like when I was applying to Berkeley, well, Berkeley has Jeff Oxendine who works there, and he's got over 20 years of health administration experience. So I think by sitting in his class, it'll help to prepare me as I transition into the health administration world. So very specific to Berkeley. So then the people reading it, they're like, oh, okay, cool. This guy knows what he wants to do, and he knows what Berkeley has to offer in order for him to achieve his goal. So that's what I did for each and every individual school. I identified a professor or something that that met like the goals I was seeking.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think it's important, just to echo what Sunny and Olivia said, even if it is in SOFAs, there should be some way, whether it's through a supplemental information you can provide, but there needs to be some way that you can write something unique for that school, degree, and program, because that's what the programs are really looking for. A generic statement is not going to make the case for most of these programs.
And while most schools use SOFAs, some do not. So I'm sure as you've done, make sure you're familiar with every school's application requirements. UC Berkeley, for example, requires you to submit your SOFAs application as well as an application to graduate division. At least I know that was the case when I applied, and I believe that's still the case. But just get really familiar with each campus. And the statement of purpose, the advice that we're giving, is general enough across programs, but specific concentrations will also say these are the types of things we really want you to talk about. So it's not just enough to say, okay, what does the UC Berkeley MPH program want me to really talk about, and how can I tailor my essay? But how does the health and social behavior program help me, and what are they looking for, and how can I make the case, because those are the faculty members that are going to be reading your essay. So I think the overall theme here is not just do your research, but really do the research at the school level, the program level, and the concentration level, so that you can put your best self forward. So we have maybe time for one more question. We had one just come in. What is the best way to show your growth within an organization, or perhaps promotions on your resume without taking up so much space? What's the best way to show that trajectory?
I would say that just to use bullet points under that particular organization. So maybe instead of making the same if you had a progression within an organization, multiple different roles, then rather than putting each role as a separate item on your resume, meaning the organization and the role together, you can put the organization, and then you can somehow in a nicely formatted way show that within the same organization you've had different roles. And you might put, Brigham and Women's Hospital for these 3 years, and then within that role you could show that you were a program associate, you were a project manager, you were a department manager, and then put some brief bullet points under each one of those responsibilities and work backwards, reverse chronological order when you show that. And that's one way to do it. Another way would be in more of a paragraph form, but then talk about the fact why I started out as the assistant to the president, and within 3 years, was promoted to be vice president of the organization, with 10 departments, reporting to me, and a budget of X million dollars. And so showing things like resumes help to show the number of people supervised, the size of the budget that you manage, the scope of the department or program, or the levels of analysis you did, those kinds of things. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. We do have some previous webinars that you can look at that really relate to the graduate school application and selection process, as well as job search. We also have some upcoming webinars that will be on the horizon, and you can join My Health Career Navigator for free. Tell your friends, and we'll look forward to next week talking about financing graduate school, which I know is an important thing on most people's mind these days with the rising costs of graduate education. So with that, have a great evening, and hopefully we'll be talking to you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.